Greetings, welcome to the Geoff Matthews podcast, where the rubber meets the road. Today I want to give you a quick futurist prediction about the export of hydrogen. Now, the export of hydrogen is being touted as a global commodity trade. There's a lot of investment going on from a lot of different countries, but there's also a lot of critics who are saying, firstly, two things. One is that if you're living in a country where you've got a relatively high current cost of energy, most of us, especially like down under here, Australia and New Zealand, and you've got people saying we're going to take your renewable energy and we're going to export it to somebody else, you're wondering, well, why aren't we using it to lower the cost of our own energy? And secondly, there's the people who think it's just too expensive for the planet to afford. In our route to decarbonisation, that the massive export of hydrogen is not something that we should be looking at investing in long term. It simply doesn't add up. Now, I've got a prediction, and I'll even put a number on it for you. And so the number's 80%. That is 80% of all the hydrogen generated from renewable energy resources will be consumed domestically where it is produced, leaving about 20% available for a global trade. Now, where do I get my numbers from? What's my logic? Well, I'm actually getting my numbers from the dairy trade, believe it or not. See, dairy produce, it's one of those things that it's difficult to export. It's heavy in its native raw milk state. And it goes off, it needs refrigeration. And most of it is consumed, 80% of all the dairy produce produced is consumed domestically in the country it's made. Leaves a global trade of about 20%. New Zealand, by the way, is a very large part of that 20%. So we're a big dominant player in the global trade. But even our milk is it's boiled down, it's dried out to its lowest common form, which is milk powder, and it's exported by the tonne and sold on the global commodity market as tonnes of milk powder. And so, and I think that's what will happen with hydrogen. So hydrogen will end up in its lowest common form, which is green ammonia, and it'll be exported as green ammonia. Because hydrogen in itself it's got the same difficulties as milk to export. It's light, it needs to be compressed, it takes energy to do that. How are you going to ship it around? So I think it will be the trade in hydrogen will be green ammonia, and it'll go to countries, and countries will reconstitute it, just like they reconstitute milk powder into what they want. They'll reconstitute green ammonia into however they want to use it. So where does that leave us in either encouraging or discouraging the large investment in a potential export of hydrogen? I say, bring it on. Let's cheerlead. Anyone who's going to look to build any more renewable energy resources and put it into a clean green energy carrier such as hydrogen, they need to be applauded. But will those export markets work out in the end? Maybe not. And possibly also, they may never have existed. There may be a lot of smoke and mirrors going on. And what am I talking about here? So if you were Australia, perhaps, then it's easy to say we're going to take our renewable energy and we're going to make it into hydrogen and we're going to export that hydrogen. And it doesn't bring you into immediate head-to-head conflict with the fossil fuel industry. But if you were saying, actually, we're going to do this and we're going to change the domestic fuel market, then you're going to immediately go head-to-head with the vested interests in fossil fuels. So I think some of this is, by saying it's for export, is simply avoiding that conflict with fossil fuels and with politicians who need to be re-elected and lobby groups, etc. And it's much easier to just say it's all for export. So I think there's a little bit of smoke and mirrors. But the big thing, anyone who's looking at developing for export, well, they're going to develop the infrastructure for a domestic hydrogen economy, and that should be applauded. We aren't going to get to decarbonisation without the use of hydrogen, in large-scale use of hydrogen. But I think we can get to decarbonisation without the large-scale export and import trade of hydrogen. And so it'll be interesting. Oh, and by the way, there always will be some. There will be countries like Australia and maybe New Zealand who have excess renewable energy resources. And especially if we start to bring on the energy resources that we currently don't have, more geothermal, wave power, tidal power, and we add those to wind and solar, there are countries like New Zealand and Australia who are going to have excess renewables. And there will be other countries like Japan, South Korea, Singapore, Malaysia, Indonesia that don't have enough renewable energy and will always have to import some. So there will be an export trade. But my prediction, it's 80-20.